So you've had your IP valued and you're wondering, what does that actually mean to an investor when they're considering valuations? So in this video, we're going to be breaking down what this means to an investor, because I know a lot of companies, especially in the innovation space, they will sometimes go and get their IP valued by third-party experts. Now, of course, you engage this because you want to be placing a value on your technology when you go to raise capital or you want to get involved in transactions. Now, look, I'm highly respectful of how much you typically invest into this process and how much you invest into your innovation. When it comes to dealing with investors, I just want you to know that the valuation that the third parties come back with when it comes to raising money means almost nothing. Right? Now, sometimes that's going to be a hard thing to swallow because, I said you've invested the money to go and do it. You've obviously invested into the IP, but understand when you're going to have external conversations with investors, it means nothing. What is super important from the investor's perspective is have you got customers? Have you actually had a conversation with a customer who has come on board and paid you money to become a client? Because from the investor's perspective, IP is one thing. There is literally thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that have had IP before that has never been commercialized, right? So from the investor's mind, they want to understand is there a product market fit for your IP? Is there someone willing to hand over money to purchase your innovation, your product, and what you've actually bought? Now, it's a super important thing to understand because it really puts in perspective what that actual valuation or that IP valuation that you've received is. Now, of course, you can find different ways to use it and you can mention it, right? But from the investor's perspective, it means nothing. They want to see, do you have clients? Is there someone that finds that IP that you've innovated and that you're looking to sell? Do they find it valuable enough that they have actually handed over money to purchase that from you, right? And then if they have done that, who are these clients? Are they, if it's a B2B business or enterprise, are they blue chip clients? And if they're blue chip clients, then what is the traction? What has been their feedback, right? Because there is so much risk in IP, right? Said an IP alone. Said even though the market's there, even though the opportunity is there, there is so much risk, right, from the investor's perspective. So regardless of that valuation that you have received on your IP, understand that when it comes to dealing with investors, what they want to see is traction. They want to understand who are the customers that have actually handed over money to pay for this, to pay for your product, your software, whatever it is that you've actually innovated. Now, the second part to when we have this conversation with companies is they say, well, look, not only have we had our IP valued, but we've also worked on these discounted cash flows. Now, if you listen to my last comment, you'll understand that just as much as that, as the valuation is the IP valuation gets sort of eliminated, in this case, so does also the discounted cash flows, because if you haven't actually gone on to sell a client your product or your offering, then what is them for them to actually reference it off? What's them to actually value off, right? It's great for you. It works well for you. But I said, you've got to think about this from the investor's perspective. I say, they are not looking to hand over money they'll hand over money to invest in something which may never actually see the light of day. The only thing they want to understand is there a customer willing to pay it? Who is that customer, right? And then if you've got customers on board and you've got traction on board, then that's when the discounted cash flows that you've worked on become valuable, right? Because, for example, you could have discounted cash flows for the next 12, 24 months, but in reality, you may not get your first client on board for the next 6 to 12 months, right? So now, obviously, I'm targeting this specific aspect to people that are in that sort of pre-revenue stage, right? But I just really want you to help understand this point, that when you're going with an investor, with your discounted cash flows and your valuation on IP via a third party, in their mind, they're actually just discounting both, right? And it's super important to understand. What they want to know is what is the product market fit, and is there someone willing to give you money to purchase your offering? Right now, of course, there are a couple of sectors that are exempt from this. This is obviously the life science area, which is a very, which is obviously got its own milestones and metrics that, and stages that investors look for in this process. And then also the same with deep tech as well, right? But just going back to those points, I hope this video makes it super clear, because I know a lot of you often get great advice. You've got advisors on board and they insist on you going down this path to help you with that capital raising process. They help you try and plant a stake in the ground to help you value what you're going to be raising capital against. But just understand that when you go to raise money from whether it be high net worth or professional investors, I said those valuations, those IP valuations mean nothing to them. And then likewise, the discounted cash flow valuations will mean nothing to them until you actually start bringing clients on board. Now, I know for some of you, that may not be the type of conversation you want to have, but it's a super important one, because I want to save you from months and months and months of frustration, right, of going through that process of wondering why it's not being given the respect or the value that you've placed on it when you present it to others. Right, so I hope that video is helpful and look forward to providing more shortly.